handle the truth.
Yes, and welcome folks to Truth versus News here on August the 31th of the month. The year's 2/3 over. What a year it's been. That's what I have a feeling about this year. So anyway, but welcome from Tahiti, and everything's going good with Jim Fetzer, the most dangerous mind in America, who has a fantastic case going on, legal case that's pending. It's really going to go his way. Scott Bennett and the most articulate mind in America, David Kinney, an outstanding attorney down there in California. We have got a show for you, and I guess let's just start off, Jim, with what happened with that RNC. You got a report on that?
Well, let's see what we got here, Don. Michael Moore is warning Trump enthusiasm is off the charts. You may remember Michael Moore predicted that Hillary could lose in 2016. He called it exactly right. He's now saying, are you ready for a Trump victory? Are you mentally prepared to be outsmarted by Trump again? Do you find comfort in your certainty there's no way Trump can win? Are you content with the trust you place in the DNC to pull this off? I'm warning you, 10 weeks in advance, the enthusiasm level for 60 million in Trump's base is off the charts. For Joe, not so much. Meanwhile, Trump went for Biden's jugular in his convention speech. The address was too long for an acceptance speech, took over an hour. On the other hand, he really did nail. He was going after Biden. Joe Biden, not a savior of America's soul, he said. He's a destroyer of America's jobs. Given the chance, he'll be the destroyer of America's greatness. For 47 years, Joe Biden took the donations of blue-collar workers, gave them hugs, even kisses, told them he felt their pain, then flew back to Washington and voted to ship their jobs to China and many other distant lands. He spent his entire career outsourcing their dreams and dreams of American workers, offshoring their jobs, opening their borders, sending their sons and daughters to fight in endless wars that have never ended. Wow. He was even more specific. Biden's record is a shameful roll call of the most catastrophic betrayals and blunders of our lifetime. Spent his entire career on the wrong side of history, voted for the NAFTA disaster, single worst betrayal ever, supported China's entry into the WTO, one of the greatest economic disasters of all time. After those Biden calamities, the U.S. lost 1 in 4 manufacturing jobs. We laid off workers in Michigan, Ohio, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, other states. They did not want to hear Biden's hollow words of empathy. They wanted their jobs back. Yep. Meanwhile, Brit Hume has made the obvious point no one in the Democratic Party wants to address. Check this out.
Joe Biden's an old man, but she will be there as a force. And of course, people believe, because Biden is obviously, to some extent at least, senile and may not be, equipped to go the distance, that she might become president sooner rather than later. And so her speech is important, and a lot of spotlight will be on her, more than would normally be the case with a vice presidential nominee. Vice presidential nominees normally don't matter much. This particular one matters a lot.
Britt, do you think this is a legitimate, issue in the campaign for people because they're both septuagenarians, or is it just because they're both talking about it? What's driving it?
I think it's an issue because the mental faculties of the President of the United States, whoever that person is obviously an issue. You want to elect somebody who's fully on top of things. And look, to some extent at times, Joe Biden has shown that he's non-compass menace. He forgets where he is. He's always made gaffes, Harris. Make no mistake about that. I've known him since he first came to the Senate. That was a long time ago. It gives you an idea how old we both are. I'm about the same age as he is. He's always made gaffes. For example, when he said, we all remember when he said, that poor kids are every bit as smart or able or whatever as white kids.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
wealthy kids, black kids, Asian kids.
That was a classic Biden gaffe. Unfortunate. You kind of know what he meant. He didn't mean to say anything that sounded racist, but it did. That's classic Biden. But when he's in Keene, New Hampshire, and is asked by a local reporter how he likes the place, and he says he likes the place, what's not to like about Vermont?
I love this place. So look, what's not to like about Vermont in terms of the beauty of it?
That's a guy who's forgotten where he is, and it happens. Look, I'm the same age as he is. I have at times recalling names and places and so on. Trump, he may have mental problems, but he doesn't seem to be senile. But you see, when you you look at a poll like the one that you just referenced, that's a reflection not so much of anybody's serious analysis of the mental acuity of the two candidates. It's about what they think about them. They don't like people who don't like Trump are going to say he's worse off mentally than Biden is.
No, all right, and in both those accounts, yours included in all of that. We are not doctors, and Maria, I want to get your response.
Yeah, I think for those of us who've worked with and know Joe Biden for a long time, this accusation that he's somehow senile or losing his mind is just so offensive. We are not doctors, Harris, and every time a Democrat talks about Donald Trump forgetting words, not being able to read from a teleprompter, making mistakes that anyone should not make in that position, Republicans jump all over us and they say, wait a second, you're not a doctor, you're not a therapist. So I think we need to be very careful in this election cycle not to throw around words like senile about people that we are watching on a television screen. And I think that for those of us who know Joe Biden, this is a very tricky subject, and we all should be very careful, which people have been telling me for years when we talk about Donald Trump. So let's just all be careful here, because that accusation is a pretty strong one.
Marie, let me make
a point. Go ahead, Britt.
The word senile is not a medical diagnosis. It refers to people who at a stage in life exhibit signs of old age in terms of their memory and mental acuity. It's not something you need to be a doctor to notice. Joe Biden has it. To some extent, I have it. People our age do. And the question arises is whether a man of his age, who's starting in the way that people inevitably do late in life to lose it a bit, should be president of the United States. This does not require a team of psychologists and psychiatrists to come in and make a medical diagnosis. It is a reasonable layman's conclusion from the evidence that is very clear before us.
It is so important to have these kinds of discussions with each other, because this is what voters are talking about. And if you think they're not, as Britt and I were both talking about, they're willing to respond to some polling where they might not respond to other things.
That game, set, and match, Britt Hume. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, there's no one better than Britt Hume, of course. I think he's right on target. I watched that very broadcast, and it's absolutely true. It's amazing too. The Fox females on these news broadcasts are part of the reason for America's media failure to really engage in combat fighting, political fighting. It's not about polite coffee discussions. It's about street fighting for political victory. And these women don't understand it. They're up there, well, we don't want to be offensive, and they flutter their eyes and almost faint when someone goes and hits Joe Biden under the jaw. They don't do it when, the Democrats don't do that. They attack Trump with full fury. But when Republicans start to go at it, our enemies are those of it are in our own household. That's been the problem with the Republican Party as a whole. Ever since George Bush and Dick Cheney and half of these knuckleheads that are now gone, they've been the reason for the failure of America. Not because of the Democrats. We know the color and the blackness of their evil and sin, but our own Republican ranks are the ones who have hobbled us. And Donald Trump is not a Republican. He is a centrist, middle of the road. He's not a politician. He has secured the middle. And that's why he is so threatening to the Democrats, because he's gone in there. He said to blacks, what have you got to lose? And they've said, you know what? He's right. I just saw the Uncle Tom film day before yesterday. Wonderful film with Candace Owens and Larry Elders and a whole host of black conservatives who articulate the history of the blacks in politics, from being Republican to then transitioning into becoming Democrat because of the New Deal and the welfare and all these things that were added. which led to the absolute decimation of the Black Negro marriages and family and generations, which has just turned them, just rotten them inside. And that's why you had so much of a institutional criminal destiny for them. And it wasn't until 1994 when, again, the contract with America under Newt Gingrich formed the new welfare reform. Bill Clinton had to sign it because the Republicans had a majority. That was the only time they started coming out of this. And the blacks are admitting this. Candace Owens and many others, Larry Elders, the Republican conservatives. So the Democrats are threatened by Trump because he's articulate. He's got happy, good-looking children who can speak wonderfully. I thought the convention was just awe-inspiring. They ought to have an Oscar Academy Award for whoever put that on. Ivanka Trump did a magnificent job introducing her father, and I wouldn't be surprised if she runs for mayor or governor of New York, because I think a political destiny is certainly within her character, and I can't imagine anyone who could do a better job at orating than Ivanka. But I thought it was a wonderful presentation. Jim?
David, your thoughts?
My thoughts, I'm concerned about the fact that Vice President Joe Biden may not be mentally stable. I think there's more than sufficient evidence showing that he's adversely affected by his age. I lived through it with my mom when in her elder years she started declining slowly, and I did everything I could to assist her. Joe Biden's on the cusp of that. I've seen this. I've lived with it. He's probably 6 months or away from some serious receiving some serious assistance. So you have to you cannot look at this presidential race as being against Trump and Biden. You have to look at it as being against Trump and Kamala Harris. And what I think is that, talking about the RNC, the convention for a minute, I thought the speech by Madison Cawthorn was perhaps one of the most moving and one of the most sincere heartfelt expressions of what it means to be an American. And I think that people out there in America, the everyday normal person who's a moderate Democrat, a moderate Republican, I think that his speech resonates toward everyone. It echoes what it means to be an American. The reverberations from his speech are encouraging, they're uplifting, and they're to be welcomed. When I hear Kamala Harris in in an interview saying that this rioting and this looting is going to go on and continue, you have to look at this race differently. It's not a Trump-Biden race, okay? It's a Trump-Kamala Harris race. She has virtually no experience. And I do want to point out this righty Vicky Osterweil, her book In Defense of Looting, where she said a new energy of resistance is building across the country. As protests and riots continue to grip cities, she argues that looting is a powerful tool to bring about real lasting change in society. The rioters who smash windows and take items from stores, she says, are engaging in a powerful tactic that questions the justice of law and order and the distribution of property and wealth in an unequal society. Well, Osterweiler, in a very prescient statement, is talking about BLM. Burning, looting, and mayhem. BLM, burning, looting, and mayhem. This is not a Biden race. This is a race between President Trump and Kamala Harris.
This is one of the intellectual leaders of the misconceived Democratic ideology behind all this lunatic activity. Scott, do you want to add a further thought? I mean, I think Dave's got it spot on.
Yeah, and I think we get into that in the next slides, Jim. So I'll wait and we'll comment.
Perfect.
It is so.
Meanwhile, C-SPAN got so many callers defecting from the Democratic Party, they changed the labels on their phone line. In other words, they're taking them from Democrats and Republicans, but so many Democrats were saying they're switching to Republicans. They changed it to support Trump, support Biden, so they could get a few callers who support Biden because there were practically none. Here's an example. Lifelong Democrat calls into C-SPAN, says he's now voting Republican. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I'm from Lorain, Ohio, a Democratic city. I just want to say, after watching the convention, I'm definitely changing my vote to Republican. I tell you, they just put the Democratic Party to shame. I'm going to follow the Republican Party now. When asked to explain what convinced him, it was the heartfelt way they came across to the American people. I was really touched by the number of times they used the word God. They put God into everything. The people on the Democratic side at their convention act like they were pushing God right out of it. And that had a lot to do with changing my mind. Independents would be making Joe Biden sweat during the Trump's convention. Pollsters claim they are resonating more with Republicans. The Democrats should be getting worried. Independent voters want to hear more about law and order and the economic recovery. During the third night of the Republican convention, Pence painted a dark picture of what the nation would look like if Democratic nominee Joe Biden were to win in November. Republicans loved the message, gave it an A. Independents gave it a B. Democrats gave it an F. The point is, the independents care about law and order in the economy. The independents resonate with the Republican platform. Democrats, on the other hand, want to defund police and embrace social justice. Even Willie Brown is reaching out to Democrats and telling them, you're getting yourselves in trouble. You're painting yourselves into a box. He's the guy, of course, who promoted Kamala Harris as a consequence of an affair they had when she was young and he was old. Wrote Saturday, Democrats should stop calling riots demonstration because burning and looting will help reelect President Donald Trump. And here we have Angela Davis, the gift that keeps on giving. Marxist leader admits BLM riots are rehearsals for Revolution USA. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, you know, in the military, the first thing they teach you, Jim, is, you know, you're not going to die if you're well trained and you're smart and you're aggressive and you work as a team. You let the other guy die. And Patton said that too. It's not, you know, your job is to kill the other son of a bitch. So all of us who've been trained, all of us who have a martial personality and are naturally aggressive, look at these Black Lives Matter lootings and riots almost like, okay, you want to fight? Let's get into a fight. We're not backing down. We're not backing up. We're not laying on our side like a golden retriever, lifting our leg in submission. We're going after you. We're going after the jugular. We're going to tear your throats out. We're going to kill all of you if you try and come into our towns and burn and loot and rape and pillage. There's no mercy. There's no surrender. You're going to get shot twice in the sternum, once in the head. That's going to happen. Because you idiots and morons and purple-haired, multiple-piercing, tattooed freaks of nature have been, yes, poisoned with all sorts of pollution in the school systems and Ativan, Adderall, lithium, and everything in between. But we're not here to cry over not enough milk in your Cheerios. We're here to tell you, act like a human being, act like a citizen of the United States, or else you will be treated like a corpse of the United States. People are fed up, Jim. That's why people are leaving the Democrat Party. That's why the most rational, reasonable people, and again, independents determine elections and they vote on their feelings. And their feelings are dread and horror and terrified of the cities and the burnings of towns and looting is all happening. Independents aren't the ones that go out into the fight. They kind of stand back and they say, who's the leader that's going to turn this fight out? Who's the leader who's going to pour water on this fire? And is it Biden or Donald Trump? Well, Biden's encouraging it because all of the lunatic criminals support Biden. Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, all the Democrats are in favor and support this. All the states are being led by Democrat mayors and governors. So independents are going, Jesus, all of you people have turned into Frankensteins, and it's all about tyranny and control. And it's reinforced by people like Tucker Carlson and others that are telling you this. So their only alternative is to Trump. Their only alternative is to not vote for Biden, which is the same as voting for Trump. And I would say the most effective thing that everybody needs to be doing, is going down into your farmers markets or public spaces on a Saturday with a big table and a sign written in a bed sheet, if you have to, that says Democrats for Trump. Democrats for Trump, not Republicans. We're already for Trump, but put Democrats for Trump and let people come to you. You don't have to say who you are. You can say, yeah, I'm an independent Democrat, but get the conversation going. Democrats for Trump, and get these people absorbed in. And Democrats who stand up, and I encountered this yesterday. I was doing a political event, and some lunatic, crazy old women come up and start chanting against Trump because I had my favorite Trump hat off. And I said, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. This is not a fight to be polite. This is a fight to take it right into their throats. I don't care if you're 110. If you're backing Biden, I'm going to knock you down with logic and uncompromising truth, so the people watching will go, I'm on his side, because he speaks logically. And all of you morons who are talking liberalism and Democrats and Michael Moore and revolution in America, you're all crazy, or you're dead man walking. Jim?
Nice.
Wow.
David, your thoughts?
Well, I have not been trained in the military arts to the degree that Mr. Bennett has. And I'll tell you, I certainly respect and fear his point of view. As an NBP, which is a natural-born pacifist, I'm going to actually defend Vice President Biden, because I don't think he's encouraging any of this looting, burning, and mayhem. I think he's hiding from it. He's afraid. He's in fear. You know, I'm used to seeing a person who's running for president of the United States out there, walking in the communities, shaking hands, going to places, getting votes. Every time I see a picture of Vice President Biden, it's with a mask on. Every time I see a picture of Kamala Harris, it's with a mask on. By the way, they look great in masks. They should just keep them on all the time. But you know, you mentioned in the briefing about Willie Lewis Brown. Let me tell you something about Willie Lewis Brown. He is an extraordinarily sharp individual. He has tentacles that reach so deeply into the communities in California, it's unbelievable. Let me point out that he has deep tentacles into the Armenian community, and he's supported by the Armenian community very, very strongly. But you know, you talk about A through F, and you've got abortions, you've got burning, looting, and mayhem, you've got corruption, you've got this deception taking place throughout politics. And then you've got this movement of ethnic studies out here in California. You know, this is the far left taking the ethnic studies program and turning it into a war against white people. It's just stunning to me. And it's for two reasons very concerning. Number one is, if they keep up this doctrine of burning, looting, and mayhem, they're creating a definite situation where we've got the right to respond. The other thing is that in this, you have actions about people responding, like that young kid Kyle. I don't have his last name, but the young kid Kyle who was being chased and shot. You know, so this is getting out of hand in America, and it makes me take my pacifist hat off.
Very good, very good, very good, very good. Yeah, we'll get to Kyle momentarily. In fact, how about now? Teenage suspect charged with first-degree murder. This is about as absurd as it gets. First-degree requires deliberate, premeditated planning to kill somebody, when this was all spontaneous and in self-defense, leading the president to tweet, "We will not stand for looting, arson, violence, and lawlessness on American streets. My team just got off the phone with Governor Evers, who agreed to accept federal assistance. Portland should do the same. Tony Evers here is a very weak governor. He doesn't know what he's doing." Here we had Kyle Rittenhouse, who should perhaps not have been patrolling the streets, but he was there. Charging him with first degree is simply absurd on its face. Video analysis shows he didn't even shoot first. Video footage show he was being pursued, physically attacked before firing any shots. One of the individuals he shot was carrying a handgun. Another tried to hit him over the head with a skateboard. Another tried to kick at his head as he lay on the ground. The man who had his arm partially blown off confesses to a friend his only regret was hesitating to pull his gun and not killing 17-year-old Rittenhouse. A friend that said that was his only regret. So the kid shot Gage as he drew his weapon, and Gage retreated with his gun in hand. I just talked to him, and his only regret was not killing the kid. I think that's going to be very helpful to his defense. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, the Kyle Rittenhouse allegedly comes from a law enforcement family. I think his father is a police officer. He's in a cadet corps. There's photographs of him, with his rifle. And he went to Kenosha to protect businesses, to preserve law and order from a militia citizen group, citizen watch sort of group, which is totally consistent with the Constitution of the United States. It's why you have the right to keep and bear arms. They had requested to be deputized, which the police should have done. That should be the pattern. We've said it before. The police should deputize citizens, and then they give them orders. You don't have authority to tell a citizen what to do if they want to patrol the streets or keep businesses safe unless you deputize them, unless you make them part of your group. Then you can say, all right, you're deputized, but your orders are to stand at this building and do not leave. Do not go on the streets. That's how you control them. And that's how you manage efficient human resources in counterterrorism operations, which is what this is. And Rittenhouse, the other mistake is you never go out on a one-man team. You always have two. You always have a two-person squad. You always have a witness there and someone to balance you, someone to keep you restrained and for you to restrain in. So him going out on his own was what got him into trouble. And yes, he behaved properly and he shot effectively and he was attacked. We're going to get into the criminality of the people who attacked him. And he defended himself with his firearm. And what happens when you defend your life is you accidentally sometimes kill others. But you don't shoot in the leg, you don't shoot in the arm, you shoot center of mass to put them down. So he took out one guy that attacked him, and then he was on the run going towards the police, and he was followed by another mob who attacked him, and one guy jumped on him and hit him with a skateboard over the head, which is assault with a deadly weapon, battery. He shot to defend himself. And then the other guy had come up with his gun and he shot again, point blank. The guy's arm wasn't blown off or else the gun would have dropped. Okay. It was a flesh wound. It did not blow his arm off or sever the nerves. So, it was a penetrating injury, but it was not.
It blew off the muscle mass in the upper part of his right arm, Scott. It was a pretty good hit. And
it was, but he still had the nerve.
The gun's still in his hand. I mean, this is all stunning stuff.
That's right. So, he behaved and then he got up and left. So this is not going to deter people from following similar actions in the future. This is only going to caution them and make them better trained to go in two-man teams. You don't go looking for trouble. You defend against it. And you have to give warnings. And that's very serious. And the other thing I think is we're going to see these charges dropped. First-degree murder is totally inconsistent with the scene, and the defense motion simply needs to file a motion court requesting to dismiss because there's no premeditation like you wisely observed, Jim.
He's already represented by one of the most famous attorneys in Wisconsin who stated candidly he did nothing wrong, with which we all agree. And of course, the role of that partner can be to watch your back. David, your thoughts?
Well, this Kyle Rittenhouse story is very concerning to me for a couple of reasons. Number one, where was the police department?
Yep.
Big breach of duty.
Yep.
Where was the fire department? Huge breach of duty. Where are the people who, to take an oath to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States? Where were those people when this poor kid, I guess what was he, 17, 18 years old?
17.
He takes it upon himself to defend the town. God bless him. Okay. He takes it on himself to defend the town. Talk about Democrats, independents, and Republicans. The Democrats that I have known, I mean, I hear it repeatedly. This is not my party anymore. I don't know what's happened to it. You know, they're hearing the middle of the road Republicans recite what to them is Democratic dogma. Okay. And they're fine with that. They're like, gosh, you know, I hate to say it, I'm a middle of the road Republican, you know, so that's the old Democrats. They're now middle of the road Republicans. But, you know, this Kyle Rittenhouse, I heard about this story. I read a little bit of information, and I immediately got online and I made a contribution to his site at Go, Give, Send, Go. When I made a contribution, they asked for $200,000 in order to for his legal costs. I made a contribution, and I would encourage virtually everyone in America to make a contribution. They're at $269,000 already for legal fees, but I can assure you that the legal fees are going to exceed that. Give this kid the opportunity, give him where he's gone out to defend America. It's our time to return the favor and go out to defend him. And I think everybody in America should send this kid $5 or $1 or $10 or $100 for his legal defense. And if they don't blow through the money, give it to the family, give it an award to him for his bravery. I went out in Glendora after his example. There were some BLM protesters in downtown Glendora taking the northeast corner of the street in our main intersection at Foothill and Glendora Avenue. And we drove by, there were some black, you know, burn, loot, mayhem people, burn, loot, murder people standing there. And all of a sudden, about a half hour later, they were in the wrong territory, man, because a lot of the Make America Great Again Republicans were coming out. And I know some of my friends who are Democrats, and I could see them in their midst. This is an attack against America. It's an attack against Democrats and Republicans. And as soon as the people of America wake up and realize that, the independents are going to flood to the Republican Party.
That was a wonderful statement, David, and you're so right about the legal fees. For my little defamation case, already 70,000 plus. He's talking about murder charges, which were absurd on their face. I'm so glad he's got this spectacular attorney and obviously the funds to pay for him. This is just terrific. Though I believe, in fact, he's going to do it pro bono. Meanwhile, in Kenosha, all three anarchist rioters who were shot have violent.
He may do it pro bono. Pardon me. He may do it pro bono, but his associates aren't. They've got to be paid. Get this lawyer funded.
Oh,
that's all I got to say.
I'm with you 100%. Yes. Meanwhile, the three who were shot all have violent criminal records. Here's Joseph D. Rosenbaum, who's a registered sex offender, shot dead. Long history of violence, convicted in Arizona 2002 for committing an act of sexual misconduct with a child. According to the sex registry, he was a level 3 offender, high risk of reoffending and great danger to his surroundings. Arizona Department of Corrections reveal he spent 12 and a half years after being convicted of 2 counts of third-degree sexual misconduct against a minor, 1 count of interfering with a monitoring device. More telling is he had 42 separate disciplinary infractions while incarcerated, including numerous assaults, committing sex acts and stalking, manufacturing a weapon, and arson. Then we have Anthony W. Huber, also shot dead, promoted as a hero by the for-profit charity business at GoFundMe, where his girlfriend has raised around $70,000 in his name. Public records show he was, in fact, a violent criminal with a history of abusing his loved ones. Get this. In 2012, he pled guilty to false imprisonment with a dangerous weapon and strangulation, domestic abuse. He appears to have violated the terms of probation in 2016, sentenced to 2 years in state prison, most of it time served, but again arrested 2018 for battery. Then Gage Grosick is a pistol-wielding anarchist in his 40s, shot in the arm while attacking Rittenhouse, charged with felony burglary and theft in 2013, violated his probation just 4 months later. Another arrest from 2017. Unclear if he was ever convicted of a felony, but if so, his possession of a firearm could get him 10 years in prison by itself. Meanwhile, the mother of a fellow who was shot unloads on violent rioters, apologizes to President Trump. This is Julia Jackson, the mother of Jacob Blake. What did she say? My family and I are very hurt and quite frankly disgusted, and as his mother, please don't burn up property and cause havoc and tear your own homes down in my son's name. You shouldn't do it. People shouldn't do it anyway, but to use my child or any other mother or father's child or tragedy to react in that manner is just not acceptable. And it's not helping Jacob. It's not helping Jacob or any of the other men or women who've suffered in these areas. Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah, that was a moment the tide had turned for CNN and Don Lemon, and that prompted Don Lemon, I think, also to begin his walking back and saying, as many others, I'm very concerned about Biden's victory. Maher has done it, and Moore, and all these people are picking up that they're not winning blacks with these encouragements to violence or mob rule or things like that. These are the moderate blacks and the mothers and the fathers and the family people, the natural conservatives that are rising up saying, you people are not honoring us. You're not honoring, quote, George Floyd. You're not honoring Breonna, whatever Pearson, I think her name was, with all these lootings and violence. You're not honoring the woman by killing Rand Paul as he was assaulted. He was the guy who wrote the law. And he said, these idiots don't understand that. They're trying to kill me, and I was the one who wrote the law protecting them. So everyone, Jim, as you've said before, including the blacks who are the reasonable ones who are not screaming for revolution and bloodshed, they're all recognizing this is a hijacked movement. The burn, loot, and murder, or Black Lives Matter, both, whatever you want to call them, is not advancing black solidarity or preserving of black lives or criminal injustice by police officers, which does occur. They're not advancing that. Instead, they're advancing, quote, the people's revolution. These three individuals who had criminal histories, two of which were Jewish, so they have this natural impulse to tear down the system, and not that they all do that, but many of them do, who are part of these militia movements, part of an anti-faith agenda, part of the eradication of Christianity from the earth. And they've said that. They've painted that on their chests. Atheism and all these things are the future. So the conservative independent people of this country recognize it, and they're divorcing themselves entirely from it. That's why this will be, I think, burned out very soon, because people aren't waiting for the police. They are acting on their own initiative because it's their towns and their people that are suffering. And if you don't annihilate this infection, it naturally spreads. So people recognize that. They're putting a tourniquet on it immediately. Jim? David, your thoughts?
Well, you've got Rosenbaum, sexual misconduct, with children. So I believe he's received a fitting response.
Yep.
I believe that Huber and Grosskreutz clearly criminals, historically criminals. So look, there's a group of these criminals. They've gotten together. All these people out in the streets, with the BLM, the burn, loot, and murder. It just seems to me that it's a giant criminal conspiracy. And I think that goes to what Scott said about Senator Rand Paul. His concern was that there were people staying in the same hotel. He saw them, and then he saw them out amongst the rioters and the protesters and the rioters in Washington. And they were intent on killing him. They were intent on injuring him. They were intent on harming him. Those are all criminal acts. Right. It's even a simple battery of pushing someone is a criminal act. So there's this massive conspiracy going on in America to ignite a revolution through criminal conduct. And I think the average normal American has to understand that. When we look at the fact that one of these guys was a child molester, the other was involved in strangulation, and the other was packing a weapon when he wasn't, licensed to do so. I mean, how long does it take to realize there's a massive criminal conspiracy going on that is adversely affecting the United States of America and every single person in it?
Right.
Everyone's affected by this. It's outrageous. And Biden needs to say something about it. Kamala Harris needs to say something about it forcefully. She needs to be forceful and say this is intolerable, but she won't. She condones it. She encourages it.
They're in the box, David. If they condemn it, then they're losing the party that they've invested so much in it. BLM and this is a money laundering operation. This is a voter registration drive. It just simply is backfiring. So they're going to fracture the Democratic Party if they speak out appropriately against it. Don, your thoughts?
Yeah, real quickly, I guess something's going to happen in Kenosha, Wisconsin tomorrow, Jim, in your backyard. Any comments about Trump arriving there? What's your feelings on that?
Oh, you mean the president coming to Kenosha?
Yeah.
I think that's great. I think it's great. And the wimpy governor here is trying to discourage him, but he's got to show he's standing up for the people. And the governor is not standing up for the people. The mayors aren't standing up for the people. And the Democratic Party is imploding. This is most absurd, as David observes. Democrats say, what happened to my party? I turn out now, given the politics of today, that I'm a moderate Republican. I'm no longer a Democrat. And that's how it's playing out. Very, very serious. The party has effectively destroyed its own prospects for 2020.
Right.
Here we got CNN hosts worrying that the Dems will face electoral consequences if they don't address rioting. This is Don Lemon speaking to Chris Cuomo, who of course is the brother of the governor of New York. Lemon's warning came as violence in Kenosha escalated for the third straight night. Democrats were silent on the stark rise in violent crime. Lori Lightfoot, this was during their convention. Lori Lightfoot even failed to mention the rampant looting happening in her city earlier this month. A Pew survey now shows 59% of voters consider dealing with violent crime very important to their vote. Only 3 points less than the coronavirus pandemic. Top Democrats fear the protests could help Trump win. It was obvious from the beginning. The first night of riots in Minneapolis, I was reporting, this is going to be very, very beneficial to Trump, very, very damaging to the Democrats. Why it matters? This is a huge story that helps explain the state of the race, with some Democrats panicked that Trump could win. A new poll out of Wisconsin's heightened worries. A Marquette Law School poll shows support for Black Lives Matter protests has dropped 13 points from June to August. There was an initial surge in support for and sympathy with BLM, but it's dropping. The shift to a more negative view in August is strongest among Republicans, but independents and Democrats also are less approving. Protesters, you know what I say? Protesters, your ass, Trump said. I don't talk about my ass. They're not protesters. Those are anarchists. They are agitators. Right. They are rioters. They are looters. They don't even know who George Floyd is. If you ask them who's George Floyd, they couldn't tell you. Senator Rand Paul and his wife Kelly observed that they were being hustled by a crowd. Paul said on Fox and Friends the attackers were yelling, "Say your name, Breonna Taylor, killed by police in a no-knock raid." I'm actually the author of the Justice for Breonna Taylor Act. 10 no-knock raids, Paul said, so the irony is lost on these idiots. Andrew Sullivan writes, the trap the Democrats walked right into. If law and order is what this election is about, they will lose it. Biden needs a gesture of real Sister Solange clarity to put daylight between him and the violent left. The bottom line, David Axelrod warned fellow Dems about Trump's effort to shift attention from COVID and unemployment to law and order. The timing of unrest in Kenosha has been a gift to him in this project. Meanwhile, Sputnik News reports Law and Order. How BLM protests can improve Trump's election odds instead of axing his 2020 bid. While Donald Trump has announced he'll travel on Tuesday to Kenosha, the scene of riots, Democrats are feeling increasingly uneasy over the possibility of looting and violence in cities, hitting Joe Biden election chancing and boosting those of President Trump. The riots are badly hurting the Democrats, said William Strzok, author and political analyst. Polls show Americans overwhelmingly oppose riots and support law enforcement. The Democrats have clearly miscalculated the potential consequences of Black Lives Matter protests, according to James Fetzer, professor emeritus at the University of Minnesota. Democrats have been so eager to unseat Trump that they've been unable to perceive the damage it would do to their cause to support rioting, looting, and arson by BLM and Antifa. When Harlem residents were interviewed about defunding the police, they were opposed to it, the professor points out. Some even said it would be suicide. New York City Mayor de Blasio sacking 600 undercover cops and allowing attacks on Fifth Avenue shops has led to a mass exodus of the wealthy who pay 60% of the taxes. A Gallup survey carried out June 23rd to July 6th indicated 81% of African Americans want police to spend the same amount of time or even more in their area. Trump will receive a large share of the black vote, Fetzer predicts. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, Jim, the only thing that surprised me during this entire episode of the riots is the absence of water cannons, the absence of water cannon trucks, which are enormously effective at putting out fires, and they're enormously effective at putting out terrorists and rioters and looters. And I would say they need to also fill those water cannons with red fire retardant of some degree. So you spray these people down, you cake them in red, thick gelatin, and you ruin their day. And these little Mickey Mouse wimps run back home or get back on their bus stop from whence they came, and they give up the fight. These are weaklings and morons and untrained idiots. And when you hit them with something that ruins their day, hell, put a little pepper spray in the water cannons, and you'll just torment and terrify them, and they'll walk away. So the absence of water cannons is a tactical failure. It's very easy to do. The plainclothes police forces need to be activated. Trump does need to go to these cities. He needs to go in like John Wayne, armed with a cavalry, and saying, I am looking what you're doing to my citizens. And then he needs to say, every American whose rights are being violated, you need to file federal lawsuits against your governor, against your mayors under 18 U.S. Code 241, 42 U.S.C. 1983 for violating your rights. And if they're locking you in your churches or locking you in your business or basements, or they're forbidding you to leave, you need to sue them. And my federal attorneys will look at your cases and suing these people for violating your civil constitutional rights. That's one thing the president needs to do. He also needs to write an executive order in response to Rand Paul's attack that says, given the riots and these lunatics attacking politicians like Rand Paul, I am not going to allow my people to be endangered. Your representatives are too important. Therefore, I'm writing an executive order that every politician that needs and wants to exercise the Second Amendment to carry a concealed weapon has my permission by executive order. It's done. I want Rand Paul to be able to walk down the streets in Washington, D.C. with a Glock on his hip in case these lunatics try and do something to him. I want every politician to have that right. You don't want to do it, that's your choice. But I don't want you to be at a grocery store and not be able to defend yourself. So he needs to write an executive order recognizing a politician's ability to keep and bear arms. That naturally can translate and metastasize into other American citizens also being given that permission, so he can phase it in. And no one can disagree with Rand Paul or other politicians being able to defend themselves from the mob. And that opens the door for a lot of the gestures we've talked about.
Not to make the obvious point, Scott, but the reason they aren't using water cannon and other available techniques is that Democrat mayors won't let them, because the Democrat mayors are supporting them. And that's going to bring about the demise of Democrat mayors. I'm telling you, the consequences are going to be enormous. Dawn, you wanted to interject.
No, not really. Go
Okay,
ahead,
David, your thoughts about
You got it all.
Well, it's too late. They're too late.
Yeah.
The mayors have been cheering this on. You've got the guy in Portland, you've got the guy in Seattle. The mayors have been cheering on this BLM. The congressmen are so inspired to have this burning and looting and mayhem taking place in the street. Even United States senators are silent on the issue. Think about that. Has Feinstein said a word? Has Schumer said a word? Have any of, well, he's a congressman, but, so you've got senators and congressmen who are encouraging, who are motivating, who are inspiring this type of conduct.
They're condoning it. Yeah,
too late.
Condoning it, tolerating and tacitly supporting it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too late. They have lost the ethical and the moral ground.
Yes.
It's been burned out right under their feet.
Right.
They have, every time they break a window and go into a business, they're stealing. They're committing arson. They're engaged in all these crimes. Mind you, this is cheered on by mayors. It's inspired by congressmen. It's motivated by senators. The whole Democratic Party has gone into a state of civil anarchy. And it's just going to continue. They operate under this rubric of white supremacy.
Ludicrous. You're 100% correct. And you have their intellectual leaders saying looting is appropriate as a form of reparations. It's insanity.
Yeah.
It's so unethical. It's so decadent from a moral point of view that I can't believe any of them would take it seriously, but that is the direction they have committed to pursue, and they are going at it with great enthusiasm.
And most importantly, it is not the path that was selected by Martin Luther King. It was not the path selected by Mahatma Gandhi. It was not the path of peaceful nonviolence that can persuade people, that can win their hearts. The Democrats have lost this battle already.
David, I couldn't agree more. I think you're 100% spot on. What's going on now is too little, too late, and they're going to pay for it at the polls. Meanwhile, the mob are turning into Trump's useful idiots. Very astute observation, completely confirming what we've been reporting. Protesters setting fire to yet another American city, telling us Black Lives Matter. Latest eruption of a black man being shot in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Investigation taking place, but the mob smashing up Kenosha doesn't care about that. He cares about rage and destruction. We see the now familiar liturgy of so-called protests, cars on fire, windows shattered, shops looted and tagged with BLM and ACAB. All cops are bastards, graffiti. Rioters even threw a brick at a police officer's head, knocking him out. Here we go. I mean, these are the images. They're going around the world, the images from Kenosha, Wisconsin. And here are the consequences. Blue swing state takes a hard turn for Trump. No Republican has won Minnesota since 1972, but it's going that way. Not only are Democrats continuing to push the idea of defunding the police, but even Joe Biden said police have become the enemy. Should we be surprised at ground zero of the riots and movement would turn for Trump? The president's been outspoken in his support of police, has used the federal government to end violence nationwide. He was also the one who ended the chaos in Minnesota after the governor admitted he couldn't stop it. So a new poll reveals Joe Biden tied with Trump for blue state Minnesota. This comes after Biden's running mate was revealed and his DNC appearance. Minnesota has suffered from riots and the defund police movement, and people are learning. They are now falling back on the idea of flooding the country with mail-in ballots. It's outrageous. Lynn County Auditor Joel Miller, who is a Democrat, in July sent out forms that already included the names, dates of birth, and voter identification numbers, supposedly to make it as easy as possible to vote by absentee during the coronavirus. But it meant anyone in the world could sign those ballots and mail it in, and on the face they'd look legitimate. Miller was violating a clear directive from Iowa's Secretary of State, ruled the judge in finding against him that informed county officials voter forms must be sent off anonymously to protect the identities of potential voters. This is a big win for President Trump in his campaign in Iowa. Another hearing is set to take place in Woodbury County with 14,000 ballot requests. It's clear the Democrats are falling back on their only available technique: cheating, line stealing, cheating. That's the new mantra of the Democratic Party. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, on the death of the Trump supporter in Portland that was killed this weekend, I think that's really opened up the Pandora's box, because now you've drawn blood. Now you have, really given license to the Trump supporting rallies to be armed and to be very, very aggressive in their defense. And I think the Black Lives Matter, Antifa protesters and all that recognize, you pick a fight with these people, you're going to be the one that's killed, because the rabble and the mob is not organized. These Trump supporters are. They're conditioned and they're trained, and they're, for the most part, very, very prepared mentally to defend themselves. That's why they voted for Donald Trump. So this is only going to compel more people to come out and exercise more of their right to keep and bear arms and protect their communities. And I think Donald Trump also sent out a tweet recognizing the young man who was shot and killed, and he said, "Rest in peace." So Trump is, in a sense, given the green light to, hey, the police and the patriots need to stand together, and these Democrats that oppose them are only a limited time. The other thing I wanted to say real quick was there was a lot of material being put out on the internet about the United Nations coming in and serving as police over cities and states. When they defund the police, that the UN's going to come in. I think that's complete propaganda, because states cannot bring in the United Nations. Trump is in power, and he would shut that down like an invading force. It's almost like the South inviting the British to come into their ranks. And so there's not going to be any UN forces coming in by permission of governors or mayors. That shut down the federal system rules. It is all entry into this country is federally controlled. And, I just wanted to put that to rest, because that can be used as propaganda to incite a lot of people to nervousness. Jim?
Yeah. David?
Sure. You mentioned lying, cheating, and stealing. Well, let's call it what it is, which is abuse, fraud, and waste. Those are the legal terms in the vernacular of lawyers, but lying, cheating, and stealing works awfully good. I hope to see Minnesota just turn over, just flip, and I fully expect it to. The violence that's taken place in Minnesota, the abuse, fraud, and waste in Minnesota, voter fraud. I mean, this is just crazy, and it's going to continue. And if the federal government doesn't do something about it, pretty soon it's shame on the federal government. It's call out the troops. And if they don't respond, it's going to be call out the citizens. And I'm going to start calling them out in my community and start asking them to respond.
David, that's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Don, I think we've reached the point of taking a break.
We've reached the point. We've been covering all kinds of good things today. And this is a hot show. You're going to want to share this, and you're not going to get this anywhere else. So thanks for watching Truth versus News here on August 31st of the month here. It's lazy, hazy, crazy, very crazy days of summer. And come back for more. We got another full hour of hot news for you. Thanks so much for watching, folks.
Criminal actors conducting acts of domestic terrorism are bent on killing police officers and destroying private and public property. Enough is enough. Councilmember Herbold, weigh in publicly and condemn these criminal actions. Seattle deserves public safety.